Today, we're building a PC from scratch. I'm RunawayLobster and I've been streaming for 10 years and I've never built a PC before. In this video, I'll be explaining each step carefully so that even complete beginners can follow along without feeling overwhelmed like I did. Huge thank you again to Lexar for sending me the SSD and the RAM for this video. And again, I'm no professional, this is my first time building a PC, so there will be mistakes in here, which I will show in the videos, so please comment any tips or tricks that you have that I've missed out on here. It won't be perfect, but this is what this video is about. And this is just the beginning of my PC build series, so if you want to see a little bit more, please like, comment, share, subscribe, I'd hugely appreciate it. I do see quite a lot of professionally polished YouTube videos of PC builds, which is absolutely beautiful, I love those. But then I want to show the other side, the raw footage, the bits you don't see, the mistakes. I'm just wondering if you can spot my first mistake already. I only learnt this at the end of my PC build experience and I hadn't realised I'd been putting some things in the wrong places. If it wasn't for my shorts algorithm, I don't think I would have figured this one out. I feel like it's important to show it, especially as a beginner, so you know other people are going through the same thing as you. So I just want to give you that confidence boost to say, yes, I can do this. If some random lady on YouTube can build a PC with no experience, then I definitely can. Okay, let's start with the motherboard. This is where my doom scrolling on TikTok and YouTube came in handy. I learned all of the different slots just by watching videos. And if you're like me, who finds it hard to read about loads of information and take it in, and you'd rather watch videos, I highly suggest doing the same if you really struggle with that also. My ADHD says no. So the slots I'm pointing out right now, those are for the RAM. Now you can have 4 slots for 4 different places for RAM on your PC, but I only have 2 on this motherboard. And this is the dreaded CPU. This is the single most important step in your PC build and is terrifying. I'm joking, I'm just being overdramatic. So there's 2 different types of base builds you can have. There's the AMD and then there's the Intel. I went for an AMD build because I usually use mine for gaming, but please again, check the compatibility just in case you buy the wrong components. So locate the alignment markers on the CPU and the socket. It should be a little triangle in the top left corner. Even if one of the tiny little pins breaks in this, it will ruin your whole PC build. I'm not exaggerating, I promise. Now carefully place the CPU in the socket and then lower the retention level to secure it. And it's a really delicate process, so you have to be very careful. And then just give it a little tiny wiggle at the end just to make sure it's in properly. I won't lie, this was the part I was not looking forward to. But here, I'll show you exactly how to do it, just so you've got 3 different perspectives at the same time, so you can see every view and every step. As you can see, when I pull down the bar, I'm slightly nervous to put it all the way through, so I did hesitate a couple of times. But the lid should pop off when you pull down the lever when the CPU is in, so don't worry about taking off that part yet. And that is the most terrifying part over. The CPU is in the motherboard, in the socket, and the lid is now off also. Okay, let's get to the most satisfying part of the build. This was honestly my favourite part of the build. I love installing the RAM, it's so satisfying. The click is unreal. So Lexar sent me their DDR5 Thor 32GB RAM. So this RAM also has RGB, so it's gonna light up beautiful in my new PC. And that's it, it's as easy as that. All you have to do is click in the RAM. Honestly, the best part. Next, we're installing the SSD. So silly me, I went ahead and inserted my SSD in the first slot here, and I realised I should have gone into the slot behind the heatsink. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it's important for thermal performance. Correcting it is simple. Remove the drive, carefully insert it into the proper slot behind the heatsink, and secure it with a screw. That's it. Don't forget there is a little bit of plastic on the other side of the heatsink you need to remove. I also realised that afterwards. Next, we're installing the motherboard into the case. Normally you'd need to install the I/O shield first. That's the metal plate that sits in the back of the case that lines up with all your ports. In this case, my motherboard came with the I/O shield already attached, so we can skip that step. That makes it a bit easier for beginners. Carefully lower the motherboard into the case, making sure the I/O ports fit neatly through the back plate. You may need to wiggle it slightly just until everything lines up. Once it's in position, check that the screw holes on the motherboard line up with the standoffs in the case. These standoffs keep the motherboard elevated so it doesn't short against the metal of the case. And there we go, the PC build is starting to come together. Now we're installing the CPU cooler. This part can be a little tricky because you need to make sure the mounting brackets are set up correctly for your socket type. Most coolers come with adjustable brackets for different CPU sockets, so I would just double check to see what brackets you have in your box. Before placing the cooler, select the right bracket for your socket, If it doesn't match, it won't line up with the screw holes on the motherboard, so you could cause damage, so I double check first. All you need to do is unscrew the old brackets, screw in the new ones, and position the cooler over the CPU. But we are missing one step first. The thermal paste on top of the CPU before the cooler goes in. Definitely don't forget that part. So the thermal paste helps transfer the heat from the CPU to the cooler. There's a lot of discussion online about how much paste to use and what pattern to apply it in. Some people use a dot, some a line, a cross. For this build, I went with a cross pattern because that's what I'd seen most of. I think I put a little bit too much paste on here though. Another mistake I made here, I should have installed the cooler before putting the motherboard into the PC case, so lesson learned, quite hard to see. Next, position the cooler over the CPU, aligning it with the correct brackets for your socket, and make sure the screws line up with the holes on the bracket. Tighten the screws, but don't over tighten them, just snug enough to hold it firmly in place. Next is the graphics card. We need to identify the correct PCIe slot. Most modern graphics cards have this slot, which is the longest one on your motherboard, and you'll usually find it closest to the CPU. If you're unsure, check your motherboard manual. Once you've noticed the slot, remove any necessary back panels so the card can fit. This is where I ran into a small issue. My graphics card wouldn't fit because the back panel of the case was in the way. So I removed the section of the back panel to make room, but some cases have removable expansion slots for this exact reason, so don't force the card, always make space. Make sure the card is seated fully and the screws are snug. This step is straightforward once you've made space for the card, but please double check the alignment to avoid issues later. Now you have to connect the power cables to the case cables. This step can be tricky for beginners because there are a lot of different connectors and they look very similar. I actually had to ask for help on this part, so don't worry if you get stuck, it does happen to everyone. I definitely recommend reading the motherboard manual carefully, it shows exactly where each cable goes. Now comes the moment of truth, powering on the PC. This is exciting and terrifying, but it's also where small mistakes can happen, especially for beginners like me. The first time I tried, it didn't turn on. The second time I tried, it also didn't turn on. It turns out a couple of the cables had slipped out of the power supply when I was fixing it in. I also made another rookie mistake. I forgot to flip the power switch at the back of the PSU. Even though everything else is already connected, the PC won't start unless the switch is on. Once the cables were secure and the switch was flipped, the system powered up perfectly. Fans started spinning, lights came on, and it was such a good feeling to see that the PC was actually working, especially after not turning on twice. But we won't talk about those embarrassing parts. And here she is, my first PC. This whole PC building experience was absolutely incredible. I would absolutely do this again, stress and all. But next time I'll have more knowledge to do it properly. I won't be putting the SSD in the wrong place. I'll be using a liquid cooler instead this time. And I'll definitely install the cooler before actually putting the motherboard in the case. This is exactly what this series is about, seeing the raw moments, the mistakes, just so you guys can also see what can happen to your PC build. I will be on my next journey into building a new PC very soon, so I will be doing a more in-depth video and I'll have a little bit more knowledge this time, which I'm very excited about, so definitely look out for the next video. Building a PC for the first time can seem intimidating, but step by step it's absolutely doable. I hope this video helps you to take your first steps into PC building with confidence. See you in the next video.